Open up with a invoking divine intention and Baruch Ha on our efforts.
Step back just a little more. Thank you.
Father Yah, thank you for this opportunity to gather in your name, to study your word, to learn about your ways. Thank you for this wonderful group of people, for family that has returned, for new family, for the bonds that we'll create this week in observing your special appointed time, your Moedim. Thank you for giving us your ornamentation, this feast, so that we can learn about you and learn what is important to you. To give us this, to teach us, so that we can become closer to you. I ask that you mute the enemy within this sanctuary. I ask that you open ears so that all of your word, all of your way is heard by all. I ask that you keep us in fellowship, brotherhood, and sisterhood while we're here. And bind our own tongues from speaking any evil. I ask these things in your Son's name, Jesus, Yeshua, or HaMashiach. Amen. Mr. Intro.
The sound.
Old plug.
Refrigerator.
Plug on the refrigerator.
Yes.
Yeah, so the intro would be good too.
Okay. Coming up, Eric Bissell, our paleo-friendly scholar, who's going to tell us a little bit about what is paleo, why are we talking about it, why is it important, and why haven't I heard about this before? Eric?
Shalom.
Hello.
Hebrew word shalom is used as a greeting, but it's a concept. It's also used as a goodbye. It's similar to the Hawaiian aloha, or from India they have a word namaste, which is, from what I understand, pretty similar. It's translated as peace, kind of like peace man, you know, from a couple decades ago. But it also has to do with whole, complete, satisfied, everything healthy, strong, the way it's supposed to be. Everything just together, without lack, without conflict. Quite unlike anything we can see in our entire society, our entire culture. So, paleo as an English word. Does anybody know what that means? Do you want to just throw out what does paleo mean?
Ancient.
Ancient. So, from what I understand, it's the same phonetics in Greek, and it basically is a word which kind of crosses through different languages. So you have these days what people call a paleo diet, and that's going back to kind of the caveman concept, where it's raw fruits and nuts and grains and things you can just pick up and eat that are at the maximum of healthy benefit because they haven't been cooked, they haven't been radiated, they haven't been chemically processed or even with machines, and all of nature's intrinsic goodness without modification. That's the paleo diet. So the fact that this happens to be what I'm calling Paleo-Hebrew is all those concepts. So even from a English perspective, English word, Paleolithic is actually, if you look at the Paleolithic, does anybody know what that means?
Ancient times?
Ancient what?
Is it ancient times? Lith is rock?
Is lithic the
Related
paint,
to
the draw?
ancient? Related to ancient?
Yes, this is related to ancient, but then, so here's what I'm trying to show you, is that the only way to know what this means, if you don't know what it means, is to break it down. So paleo, we know that means ancient, but what is lithic?
Rock.
The draw, the copy, the picture?
What other words look like
Lithograph.
lithograph, and what is a lithograph?
A copy, a
Copies,
rendition of a,
or mimics, or shows.
So it's kind of pictures. Paleolithic would be perhaps pictures of cave drawings on, or rock drawings, right? So T and TH, if you change this to literary or literature, that has to do with writing. So one way, even in English, to figure out what a word means is if you can break it down into either syllables or basic concepts. If I would just say, if I said unpaleolithic, could you find that word in the dictionary? Maybe not. Why? Because this un is just a prefix which is stuck onto anything. But you could look at a word like unbiased, and you might find that word in the dictionary because that's a kind of a common word. So what I'm saying is that you'll find the same thing done in the Hebrew dictionary. Some words attach the prefix to the base word because that's kind of its own word in the context of that prefix, and other times the prefix is just stuck onto your basic word, and so the only entry in the dictionary is the basic word. So right out of the gate, I'm going to recommend this dictionary with a caveat, with a point that says, if you want to do the easy thing, you can look at eSword, Blue Letter Bible, something like that, where you either write in the search engine, you say, what's the word that means ancient rock drawings, carvings, inscriptions, or you could say, what is the Hebrew word for whatever, or where can I find this word? And that's a really great search tool. I hardly ever, if ever, do that just because I've found this other mechanism that I like. But I know a lot of people that do that, and it's a great convenience, which never used to exist. You know, a decade or so ago, it just wasn't around. But what I'm saying is that because of the way words work, it's going to take personal effort. You can't just push a button and find it. It's not going to give you the full picture. But it'll give you enough of a picture that if you just have a curious interest, then that's fine. There's absolutely no mandate, or even what I would say is a scriptural demand that you better do this. This is completely elective. So just so you know, if you want to look at your computer and look things up, that's fine. And even if you get bored with what I'm saying and you want to play video games on your computer while we're talking, that's fine. This is Sukkot. It's our festival of rejoicing, and this is the first day of rest. If you want to sleep and not even listen, that's okay too. No offense, no harm, no foul. Just relax. You're welcome to. Just for the record. I personally don't care. The other thing about interrupting me, if you have a question or even a divine insight, wow, I just got this enlightenment, please raise your hand and share it. Just raise your hand and participate. This isn't some college lecture where you better sit there and take notes and I'm just going to hammer away at this. So please be involved. So the concept here, if you actually, just for what it's worth, go to a website called Ancient Hebrew, I believe it's .org, that's Jeff Benner. And he has a different approach than me of analyzing, studying the language. It's very insightful. You get a lot out of it. There's also a guy named Frank Seekins which has a site Hebrew word pictures. That's the name of the book that he did. He's a guy out of Arizona. Fantastic book. His first edition was for, kind of looked like it was for grade school children. Very simple, big pictures, almost like a comic or a cartoon book, you know, something where you take kids and have a coloring book. Over the years, he's modified it and done other editions. Now it almost looks like a college textbook. So it's a whole different, you might look at it now and find it kind of intimidating.
Isn't it living word pictures?
No, Hebrew word pictures. That's Frank Seekins. It's a very simple elementary book, at least his old one was. I'm just saying that it's still a good, really good book. Before one of the earlier editions, if you happen to ever find one of those, he'll basically show you what became of the original letters as they evolved through different languages. Russian, Arabic, English, modern Hebrew, a whole array, and it kind of showed you how they evolved through time. To most people, the alphabet is simply that. It's started off cavemen drawing on the walls. I mean, this is what the world-class linguistic, call them scientists, scholars, historians.
Well, they think it evolved.
They think it evolved. I was talking to the publisher of this Red Dictionary in Jerusalem, and he showed me a book, gave me a book by, he said, this is the world's premier, foremost authority on the Hebrew language, where it came from. A lady, and I forget her name, but the point is, little cartoon drawings of little cavemen and this and that, and she basically says right there, the items in use, if you're a very primitive paleo society, you need a place to stay, a cave, so you go into it. Well, that's the bed. You need to have transportation, so there's your camel, that's the gimel. You need to have a tool, an implement, like we would maybe have a bulldozer. They had an ox, that's the aleph. Fish hook, there's the zadi. And so those pretty elementary objects of their culture got wrapped up into their language, and then somebody decided to set them down as images. So you might have a fish hook that looked like that. Doesn't exactly look like a fish hook. Or maybe you'll have this. That doesn't look like a fish hook either. That's the letter zadi in ancient form. I draw it like that because, hey, that looks like a fish hook of a sort. The point is, all of these you'll find in Paleolithic cave drawings, or pottery shards, or even pieces of jewelry maybe. They're all legitimate shapes. So what I did is I looked at a whole variety. When I was doing this, I didn't have access to the internet. And there wasn't even as much information as there now is on the internet. But I looked at every possible ancient catalog of Hebrew or Phoenician or just the most ancient collection of Semitic letters I could find. And what I did is I picked out, cherry picking you might call it, I picked out from the whole array the letters which were most simple, eloquent, clean, elegant. Eloquent meaning they spoke for themselves, elegant meaning unadorned, unfrilled. And I determined that that looked like a fish hook. If you don't know what that is, and you go, if I say, hey, what do you think that means? It's like, where do you even start? And if I say, hey, that's a fish hook, it's like, really? But here, you know, that doesn't take a whole lot of explanation. I mean, that might almost look like in the days of the knights, you know, they had these pikemen, and they're holding this thing, and it had a hook on it. It was literally like a can opener, so that when the knight in armor fell off his horse, you crank open the joints in the armor, and you poke him with the I mean, that's what they were for. It's literally, so the hook wasn't necessarily just to catch a fish, but it was the design of a tool. So the thing about the Hebrew letters is that they're all pictures. Every single Hebrew letter is a picture. And the word itself, which is the name of the letter, is a meaning. It's an object, a noun. So, for example, the first letter is Aleph, and it literally is the word for ox. Now, there's a bunch of other things it means, but the word Aleph is ox. So if you are learning the alphabet, and there's 22 letters in the ancient alphabetic sequence. Some people say there's more. Some people say there was another letter pronounced like Chayin, and that's too much information at this point. But what I'm saying is that some people suggest there was a few extra letters thrown in. As part of the study, I can qualify why I believe there was actually only 22. But professional scholars would completely disagree with me. Going back to this lady who's the world's preeminent scholar, for her to say that this alphabet was derived from cavemen, very primitive society, simply assembling pictures of the objects that they had as common use in their day, I equate to Charles Darwin saying the reason why the world looks like it does is because it just evolved. According to the biblical explanation, the creator, an individual mind person, intentionally designed, created, and built the universe like this. And whether there were what we might call evolutionary forces of natural selection is different than saying everything just became as it is because it evolved of its own accord. Imagine that. So I think that her explanation of how did this alphabet get here was just as corrupt as to say that Darwin's explanation for how the world got here. I don't think it's legitimate, but there's a little slice of relationship. Just like natural selection, sure, okay, that's the way things work, but that's within a certain species, it's not cross-species. You know what I mean by that? Okay, so just checking. Have I lost anybody, or still don't understand what I'm saying? All right, so this particular first session is just to introduce you to what the alphabet is and what's going on and why we're even talking about it. So for me to say that the Semitic alphabet, if you look in the dictionary and encyclopedia, it'll tell you that Semitic alphabet is a whole collection of various languages. It's the Semitic group. And it has maybe 3 or 4 different characteristics. First of all, they have 3-letter verb roots. So basically, for all intents and purposes, you could say every single word is essentially boils down to 3 letters. We think the word elephant, that has a whole bunch of letters in English, and if you take out a couple letters, it's not an elephant. So how can you take car? Well, that's 3 letters. It's short for carriage, but that's more. But how can you flag, F-L-A-G, that's 4 letters. How can you drop that down into 3? But English is a Semitic language, so how does that work? Just saying that the Semitic language group has 3 consonants. Oh, good. Well, there's 3 in flag, even though we spell it with 4 letters. So right off the top, right out of the gate, you have to sit there and say, okay, I'm going to have to apply my mind to understand what's going on and why and what significance it has. So even if you don't remember anything I'm telling you, like I'm not expecting you to take notes, but I'm just trying to give you an overall feel or a taste for what Hebrew, how it works and what it is. So if it has 3 consonant letters, meaning no vowels, and then it has only 2 tenses. We have past, present, and future. But this Hebrew has what's called perfect and imperfect, or completed action and uncompleted action. It's not past, present, and future. So therefore, the only way to understand Hebrew is to take our English mind orientation and say, it just doesn't fit. Furthermore, as some people have said, the Greek notion is description of appearance, For example, describe a pencil. Tony, how would you describe a pencil?
A long cylinder, a long or rectangular wooden object.
Okay, is that a pencil? Sure it is. That's what it looks like. The Hebrew mind might say it's what you used to write with.
Writing object.
So now that's a verb function as compared to a descriptive noun function. They're both absolutely accurate. What's a key? A key. You stick it in the door. What is it? What does it do?
It opens.
It opens.
Yeah. Or it unlocks.
Or what? Which is it? One or the other.
It unlocks.
It okay. What about locking? Doesn't it do that?
Yeah.
Why did you only pick one?
As you turned it counterclockwise.
That was good.
Good cover. Here's the thing. You look up in the dictionary. In Hebrew, it says a key is that which opens and unlocks. But you look in the Greek under the word for key, and it means that which locks and closes up. You can say, well, that's interesting. That's just a different perspective. And it's like, wait a second. Let's read into this a little bit. Why was Greek what they called, I think it's Latin, lingua franca, common language, the universal commercial language, as of about 2,000 years ago? Why was it Greek? I've heard it said from a, like in church, from the Christian perspective, it's like, gee, the Almighty knew that Greek was a great convenient vehicle by which to disseminate the word throughout the world. So why? Because Alexander the Great took over the world, for all intents and purposes, at least in the whole Middle East, and he made Greek the common language. So he overrode all the local dialects and made everybody speak Greek. And Greek is pretty complex, so that's why you have preachers standing up front. What is it? What do they call it? Exegesis, where they break down the Greek words and show you what they mean. But I've also seen it printed in the ISR Bible, Institute of Scripture Research, printed out of South Africa. I think it's a pretty good translation. I see things a little differently. That blue book right there, that's a great translation, I think. But it's not full. But the point, it's not shalom. But the point is, in one of their publications, in one of the cover pages, a preface or whatever, they said, there's over 36,000 various pieces of Greek manuscripts. No two match. Just biblical Greek texts. No two match, word for word, letter for letter, 100%. Okay, so which one of those 36,000 Greek documents was the Holy Spirit inspired pure truth that all the other ones are variations and derivatives of, that, but that's the real one? Which one of those 36,000? I've always heard that it was the Holy Spirit's job to ensure and maintain the accuracy of the Bible. So we have the King James, refined 7 times, but the King James came from the Greek, didn't it? Okay, so which one of those Greek manuscripts was the correct version? 36,000. Now, if the Holy Spirit would have seen to it, my thinking, if he would have seen to it that 2 of them matched, then you go, oh, it's that one, because look, we have a second voice. But it's like, it almost seems like it would have been a harder job for the Holy Spirit to make sure that none of them matched. That's Greek. But Greek was used as a vehicle to get those words across the whole empire. But if you read Hebrew, Greek is a key which locks and closes. What? I thought it was supposed to unlock. No, Hebrew unlocks. But nobody speaks Hebrew? Hence the curse. Yahweh himself said, okay, I'm giving the truth, pure, open, pure shalom revelation to my people Israel. Abraham. Does anybody know why did the Almighty choose Abraham to be the chosen one. Huh?
He was righteous and just meant that he did what was right.
No, he wasn't righteous. As a matter of fact, not that this is 100% the picture, but there's a verse where he told Abraham, hey, go out and sephir the stars. It's translated to count the stars. Nobody can count the stars. But Abraham believed, so that was attributed as righteous. But was Abraham righteous? That's a bigger subject we can get to later. But the point is that there's another verse that Yahweh says, I chose Abraham because... Huh?
Because of his faith.
Wasn't even his faith. Now, maybe the reason was because he had faith. But he didn't say because he had faith. Does everybody know what I'm talking about? Where that verse is?
Obedience.
Wasn't even obedience. I don't know where this verse is. I can't tell you offhand. But it says, Yahweh noticed that Abraham would teach his children. And he says, I see that Abraham will teach his children. Therefore, I have loved Abraham, and I have chosen Abraham, and I'm going to give him the teachings. But then he also knew that Abraham, because of his faith, would be obedient. But in that obedience, in that faith, he would pass this along generation after generation after generation, and that trait of teaching was the thing that Elohim was looking for. So for us to sit here and do some format of teaching plays right into the dearest thing in Abba's heart, that his children teach and learn. His instructions. So for us to sit here and do this is not a waste of time in any stretch of the imagination. It's exactly what warms his heart to see his children doing. Now, whatever that looks like, whether we're getting into individual letters or just general teachings or even teaching Greek, I'm not putting teaching Greek down, but I'm saying it's an interesting observation to see that in the dictionary, a Greek key is that which locks something up. And a Hebrew key is that which opens something up. So I'm not saying that Greek is bad and it'll imprison your mind, but I'm just saying, isn't it interesting to note that? So I choose to believe that Greek is going to hide something and Hebrew is going to uncover something. Just because of that one word. And if I wrote the Hebrew down for the word key, mem petav het, okay, then you can get in this whole word study. Het is the 8th letter, our letter H, but the word that's pronounced as an H is actually a hey. So if you look at mem petav hey, which is a related word, it shows you this whole other thing. And now you can sit there and because of English, you can sit there analyzing these words and you can just drift off for hours just looking at one word and where it takes you, and it's like, whoa, what am I doing? I'm wasting my time. I'm supposed to be... No, you're not. You're not wasting your time at all. There's something about Hebrew which is just contemplating,
What were
pondering.
the letters? What were the Hebrew letters for key?
Mem, Petav, Tet.
Can everybody see that? Or is our video system blocking? Nope, everybody.
Well, that should be okay. Anyway, what I'm saying is that here, let me just show you a little interesting. Okay, I'm kind of jumping around here, but I'm trying to give you a little taste of looking at Hebrew. So somebody can say, hey, you should study Hebrew, and how do you do that? If you go online, if you go take a Hebrew class, I don't think they're going to do what I'm just doing here. Nor will you get this from Frank Sequins, and I'm not sure about Jeff Benner, but maybe not. I'm trying to give you a little taste of the experience of what I'm doing by studying Hebrew. So I'm just going to take this one word, and this is the word for key, and just say, okay, now I'm just going to give you a heads up that mem is a prefix letter, and Hebrew is written from right to left. So this is the 3-letter verb root. So if I look at petav het, Just here, let me just give a plug for this. Comprehensive Etymological Dictionary of the Hebrew Language for Readers of English by Ernest Klein, published by Carta Jerusalem. I've looked at as many dictionaries as I could find. This is the best one, the most useful that I've found. For readers of English means that in Hebrew, they open the book back here. In English, we open it here. So this particular one, this is where it starts. And so the entries are alphabetically the way we would look at English from left to right, but the words are spelled in Hebrew, so the words are spelled right to left. And so automatically, you've got to sit there and flip your mind back and forth. And it's like that's going to burn a certain amount of energy and cause a certain amount of dissonance, confusion, and you might go, oh, I don't need this. This is just, it's like, okay, so let it go. It's okay. But if you want to understand the language, you have to go there. You have to realize there's going to be dissonance with your existing culture. The way you read, the way that you think letters are simply phonics when they are also pictures. And then somebody will say, well, which picture? I could give you a list of a half a dozen different meanings of each letter, and then maybe a dozen different meanings of each word, and some people say, that's it, I'm done. And I've heard people say that. It's like, too many, I just need a definition. Okay, somebody who's maybe mathematically minded, engineering minded, things should be just so. You can use Hebrew that way, but that's not the full scope of Hebrew. That's superimposing another perspective of a cultural basic. You call it a paradigm, call it the way the syntax or the sentence structure, the language structure works. To superimpose another language's perspective on the Hebrew and look through it, you can still see, you can still extract something from Hebrew, but what I'm trying to say is that the way to get into Hebrew is to go back to the Paleo-ancient place and try to look at it from that perspective. So, to look at a Petav Het, page 536, it means opening or doorway. This word here, Petav Het, means opening or doorway. But it also means to carve or engrave. To carve or engrave. In what? Carve your name on a tree? Get a piece of pottery and engrave some designs? How is that a doorway? Or it's an opening because something opens up. When you carve, you gouge in, and the surface is now open. So now I have to read these words and try to fit them together. It also means to mark with a vowel. Well, the Paleo Hebrew doesn't use any vowels. The modern Hebrew, its vowels literally are something like a line underneath, or maybe two dots underneath, or maybe if this had the letter Vav, maybe you'd have a dot over there. But it's not in Paleo, it's in modern. So you're never going to see vowel points in the Paleo. How are those? These are the vowels, these little marks underneath the letter. Why should those be the same word, meaning doorway, opening, to carve or engrave? If you speak a vowel, A, E, I, O, U, in English, it's the way you open your mouth, A, E, O, U. Different sizes, so just like if you have a musical instrument and you have different sizes of a speaker end, it's going to change the pitch. So what I'm saying is you have to sit here and analyze. Now, just to give you a heads up as to why this is even significant, I have found that this process of doing this was very specifically and intentionally designed by Yahweh himself. And I found a couple words in various texts in reading it and trying to process and analyze that spelling words is the sport of the heavens. So in America we might say, what's the national sport? Baseball, football, basketball. What's the national sport of England? Cricket. What's the national, maybe not, but I'm just saying, but the national sport of Canada? curling or maybe hockey or what?
Said hockey.
Hockey. What's the national sport of the kingdom of Yahweh? I'm suggesting it's spelling words. And it's like, that's insane. No, it's not. It's brilliant. He's the guy that invented words, and that's part of the study that I could prove to you. He's the guy that invented human sentient processing of not only just thinking beyond animal levels, but they say a mamba snake is very intelligent and thinks, but that's more to the extreme than any other animal, maybe a porpoise. But to believe. Humans can do things with their mind, their brain, their heart, that the other animals can't do. Belief is one of them. Why? Because it all has to do with words. Believe what? Have faith in what? You have to be able to imagine beyond the temporal expedience, like a mamba snake thinks, hey, you look pretty tasty, I'm going to bite you. I'm going to eat you. And they plan, they strategize. But is it beyond the immediate hunt? Who knows? But humans certainly can project out of this realm into another. Why? Because Yahweh made it so. How did you explain? You want to verbalize that concept of I believe, therefore I am?
I believe, therefore I am.
And explain that.
Well, many have heard the Descartes quote of I think, therefore I am, which was, you're actually better explaining this one, but several hundred-page philosophical writing concluded into the fact he was trying to prove sentience, and he concluded it with, I think, therefore I am. And yet, here we have an example of a snake that thinks. Does that make him sentient? I don't think so. So, we're having a conversation the other night, and I just threw out the twist of I believe, therefore I am. And that created an entire ruckus because I misquoted Descartes. But I wasn't, I was purposefully twisting it. And at the same time doing a double entendre. I believe, therefore I am, is a statement of proof of consciousness due to the ability to believe. But the next layer is, who is I am? So now listen to the sentence. I believe, therefore I am. It's a double proof. I believe because of I am. He made it so. So, it proves my consciousness, but it also proves that there has to be a creator. Because an evolutionary, this one can think, that one can think, that one can think. There's no transition of that to believe. So it has to be that there's a creator to create the one who can believe.
Which is his own image. So you might say he created man, humanity, in his own image. Does that mean head, torso, appendages, arms and legs, or does it mean the ability to believe? The ability to think, which language provides the mechanism of beyond just consciousness, just sentience, which is thinking and perceiving and processing incoming stimuli through the various senses. To believe is a trait of the one who created the ability to believe. So that proves that there is a creator, and the fact that you can believe is proof that he made you, because it's beyond anything that cells could just do by themselves. It's beyond natural, you might say, elementary cellular function. We could elaborate on that, but to leave it there, the point is, language is his stuff. And I've seen things in words which, with such wordplay, such multiple levels of connections, that it's obviously him. Last night we were talking just about a couple words, and it got pretty deep pretty quick. And again, you don't have to go there. You don't have to go there. You don't have to go to the football game to watch them play. You don't even have to play football yourself. But if you can appreciate it, it's a wonderful game. If you can appreciate it. So I'm just trying to give a little bit of what I think is so great about the sport of spelling Hebrew words. Because I think that Yahweh himself invented that, he loves it, and he gave humans that is their highest use of their mind, is messing with words. It's his stuff. As a matter of fact, not only is it his stuff, what I found is he hid himself on purpose in the language. That's where he could be found. In the letters and in the spelling of words, he put himself in there. I can show you verses which say so. But beyond the verses, I can show you the analytical proof that that's what it is. But that's a little bit further into the study, which we'll get to hopefully within a couple days, if you want to see that. So what I'm suggesting is, just to bring the surface context out to make it plain, if you study Hebrew, you are studying Yod He Vav He, Yahweh. You are studying the creator of the heavens and the earth. The language is him. It's to behold his face is by regarding his words. And yet Yeshua, he said, if you've seen me, you've seen the Father. Okay, well, let's draw a picture of that guy. Let's say, gee, if somebody had only had a camera to photograph him, it's like, no, he's the Word made flesh. So if you study the Word, you're studying him, who is the Mashiach, who is the embodiment in human form of these Hebrew words spelled by these 22 Hebrew letters.
What's that Genesis verse? 1:1?
John 1:1?
No.
And Genesis 1:1. Let me address that in a moment.
Am I sidetracking too badly?
No, we can get to that, but let me get to that in a moment. Let me finish with this before we get spread out too many different directions. Going back to Petav Het, the word means to carve or engrave. It means to mark with a vowel. It's an opening, a doorway, an entrance, or a starting point, such as in the phrase Patach Debarika means an opening of the words. Now, Ha-Debarika, you could say, well, that literally means your words. And so to Petach Debarika, Petach doesn't mean opening of words, but it's used in the phrase opening of words. Who would even say that? Where's this from? The phrase opening of words, Psalms 119, 130. Psalms 119, 130. We could look that up and say, what in the heck was David referring to by using even as a concept the opening of words? Who knew that words could be opened? Well, I just know what the words mean. No! Cat, C-A-T, it means that animal. Is that opening of words? What's opening of words? Here, we can look this up later. Psalm 119, 130. There's another interesting verse in Psalms 119. It says, in verse 18, it says, open my eyes, Yahweh, that I may perceive. And then here's the word, it's pronounced nephlot. Nephlot. What is that? Well, it's Nun, Pei, Lamed, Aleph, Vav, Tav. I'll explain this as we progress, but again, I'm just trying to show you something. This is the letter Nun, and remember it's written that direction. That's N. This is the letter P or F, which is why we have a PH. You ever wondered why P and PH? Why does PH sound like an F? It's Hebrew. It goes all the way back to the Hebrew. This is an L, this is an A, this is an O, and that's T. But this is the plural, so this is the suffix, and this is the three-letter verb root, which is pronounced paleo. So even though it says nephalot, it's the word that means, if you look at the dictionary, it means hidden, mystery, miraculous, wonder. So David was saying, open my eyes that please allow me, please impart to me. This letter nun is an impartation, and it's kind of like this lightning bolt. So you're just out there and all of a sudden, this crack of a lightning bolt and the thunder, it's like, wow, just like incoming from up there down to here. Same picture. That's why the lightning bolt's shaped like this N, or that's why the noon's shaped like lightning. And he's saying, please impart to me, opening my understanding to the hidden miraculous wonders in your Torah.
And what's that verse?
Psalms 118, verse 18. So what I'm saying is David knew the language. He already knew how to speak Hebrew. He knew how to read Hebrew. He already knew how to read the Torah and get the history and the list of commandments. There was only the 5 books at that time, Genesis through Deuteronomy, and probably Joshua and Judges. There was no other books of the Bible. So he's talking about this and saying, I can read the stories, but there's something else going on. What is that? No way for him to figure it out. It's a hidden mystery. So he appeals to the source of the mystery and says, will you please open my eyes so I can hear your nephalot, your hidden mysteries that you have put into the writings? What do you think? Do you think Yahweh answered that prayer in the affirmative or the negative? If David called out and said, will you please open my eyes to perceive this? Do you think Yahweh said, sorry, David, it's not for you. I'm not going to tell you. Do you think Yahweh said, hey, yeah, sure, I'll open your eyes. You want to see something? Okay. Did David, let's say it was in the affirmative, did David actually see something and go, wow, this is incredible? And would he tell us what that was? Do you think? Okay, think back. If you were David and you saw some hidden mystery, do you just go blab it out on the street and tell everybody if it's a hidden wonder that you had to specifically ask for? Maybe. Can you recall in any of David's writings, where did he tell us what those hidden mysteries are that he was shown? Can you think of one? In any of the Psalms?
Your words are a light into my path.
They are a light, but what did the light show him? What hidden mysteries were shown?
Shown the rock and Yeshua.
Where? Can you think of a verse? I mean, that's a good guess, but where's the proof of it? Where did David write something specifically about Yeshua? You could say, well, Psalms 22, where he says, Eli, Eli, lama sabachthani, and they've punctured my hands and my feet, and people say, oh, that's messianic prophecy, but it doesn't say so. It never says it's a messianic prophecy. You'd almost have to have seen Yeshua on the cross and go, hey, wait a minute, that reminds me of something in Psalm 22 because of what he said and the fact that they punctured his hands and his feet, but it's not a one-to-one, you might say, direct prophetic description. Okay, here, let me rephrase the question. Where did David ever tell us why he loved the Torah so much? Why? Because it's a light, because it empowers him, because it gives him clear thinking. Okay, but how? What did he see that was so wonderful? You look all through, let me say, where do you think he would have hid it? Where would David hide a mystery if he was shown it? Where would you go looking?
I was going to say Psalm 119 because it has the alphabet.
Acronyms?
What he just said, is everybody familiar with Psalm 118? Okay, Tony, I'm just going to pick on you, but I don't know you, so I don't know what I'm asking. But here, do you know how Psalm 119 is formatted?
No.
Okay, I'm going to guess you've spent years reading the Bible? Okay, so here's the interesting thing. In English Bibles, sometimes they'll just write Psalm 119 as a list of words. Other time, they have it formatted into 22 sections. Some Bibles will do it and some Bibles won't. Each section is titled, headlined, by the next progressive letter of the alphabet. And each section has 8 verses. So, under the Aleph, you have 8 verses. And then it's section Bet, and you've got 8 verses. Section Gimel, 8 verses. And it goes through with the 22 letters. So for somebody to say, hey, there's really 27 letters, or there's really 30 letters in the Semitic alphabet, why did David only pick 22? David was, by writing Psalm 119, David was kind of leaving a map. David was about 1000 BC. So regardless of any other ideas of what's going on with the Semitic alphabet, who was the first one to derive it, at least David left us 22 milestones in sequential order as a map of Hebrew as he had the mind of it as of 1000 BC.
I'd suggest he gave us the first version of Webster's dictionary.
And what does that mean?
Webster's dictionary was originally published to create the definition of words so that people later couldn't twist the meaning of the Constitution of the United States.
Okay, so that means that David had to have spent quite some time studying the Hebrew language, and in particular the Hebrew alphabet. So in order to lock in what an aleph was as a meaning, not just ox, but hidden wonder of the concept of an aleph, there's 8 verses that tell you something. And then, different than aleph, there's 8 verses locking in the meaning of bet. Is that what you're suggesting?
That, as well as the establishment of, here's the 22.
Okay, by saying here's the 22, on a simple level, you're at least locking in the 22 letter sequence as a size and an order. So nobody can change it. I mean, you can change it. The Greek alphabet came out of Hebrew, but it added letters and took away Hebrews. And then the English alphabet added and took away letters from the Greek based on Latin, but you've got a jumble, adding and subtracting. But at least David locked in, boom, like I said, milestones, pillars, like columns around a temple, each one meaning something, standing for something. At least David gave us that.
Well, without even going to alternate languages, you go to the modern Hebrew, and you got more than the 22.
Just so you know what he's saying, in the Paleo there's 22 basic letters, and in English we have, like the letter A, we have a capital, and then we have 2 versions of the lowercase, right? And in the letter bet, and then we could even do cursive. There's an A, and then here's a B. It's still all the same thing. When do we use a capital letter in English? Beginning of a sentence or a proper noun. Hebrew doesn't have capital letters. Kind of, sort of. They do have 5 capital letters, but they only show up at the end of a word, and only in modern Hebrew. Just for what it's worth, they're called sophit. Sophit. Because this word soph means end. So sophit, this kind of the syllable eat is kind of almost like an English suffix. Like ing, ing, or ishus, that type of a thing. A lot of Hebrew you'll find is directly into English. So a lot of the words are the exact same, like we mentioned mal, being bad earlier, just mentioned, so Spanish. If someone says mal, that means bad. In English, we might have the word mal, which is something that's all chewed up. That makes it bad. As a matter of fact, if it's food that's been mauled by an animal, that's ritually unfit to be called food, so it's no longer kosher. So the interesting thing about Spanish is that it comes from Spain, which was the Iberian Peninsula, and the word Iber is actually the word from Hebrew, which comes from a guy named Eber, which was Abraham's granddaddy or great-granddaddy. It's all the same word. Spain was called the Iberian Peninsula because in Solomon and David's time, specifically Solomon, his men had Spain as the outpost going out of the Mediterranean, Straits of Gibraltar, for shipping, and he had ships going all around the world.
Closer English tie, malevolent.
Excuse me?
Closer English tie-in, malevolent.
Malevolent, which is, yeah.
Malfeasance, anything, yeah,
Or something along those lines, right? And malfeasance, you said?
Don't try to spell it.
No, I was just going to say,
I mean, there's so many.
no, I was going to say the name of the evil witch in the Dalmatian, no, that was Cruella de Vil, which is
It
Cruel
wasn't
Devil.
the
But
Dalmatians, it was Snow White, wasn't it?
Snow White, her name was Maleficent or something like that.
Yeah,
Right, the powerful evil. So what I'm saying is that once you start messing with words, there's a very close connection between Hebrew and Spanish, and English is a potpourri of Spanish, French, some Russian, some German, some Greek, and some Latin. And I mean, English is just this wonderful amalgamation. Why, it's veritably like Babel. Not Babel in a bad way, but Babel meaning the mixture, in which you could call that confusion, but it's only confusion because it's not pure and clean. It's not just one, this is pure French, or pure Hebrew. And again, I'm not saying English is bad. English is an incredible language. But I'm just saying that this whole concept of playing with words, I believe is Yahweh's stuff. Therefore, you could say, well, we should be having a worship time. We should be having a prayer time. Personally, what I've found, what is prayer? Prayer at a simple level, what you might teach your children is, thank you, God. Okay, that's prayer. Please bless Mom and Dad. That's prayer. Please help me on my homework. That's a prayer. Thank you for this food that you've provided. That's a prayer. Then you take that up a notch, and it might be, Hodu la yuaki tov. Give thanks to Yahweh for His goodness. Now you're declaring something about His character and nature. It's good. It's not mal. It's not malevolent. It's good. In spite of the fact that you don't see a healing, in spite of the fact that your car got a flat tire, in spite of the fact you've got some jerk in public office, you're making a declaration of what you believe, and you're stating it. That's a type of prayer. But I've heard it said also that you should listen probably more than you speak in prayer. Listen? How do you listen in prayer?
But to me, when you were saying what is prayer, the first thing that came to my mind is communication. With our Maker.
Co means back and forth.
Right. I never
So-
thought of it just one way.
So how do you listen when you're praying? Listening to what?
Well, sometimes you're praying, you're not actually using words.
What are you doing? If you're not using words and you're praying,
Well, I mean,
No,
some people call it meditation. You're just being quiet and still.
and what are you hearing? What are you projecting? Two different acts. Hearing and projecting, not using words, but what's happening. Can you put that into
You're
words?
opening your mind up.
Opening your mind and or opening your heart.
Your soul, right.
So
Same
if somehow you can break open your heart, which is a different level of communication than the mind,
Right.
and not putting it into words, but it's almost like you're projecting this force of emotion that if you tried to put it into words, it would almost pollute it, minimalize it, defile it, reduce it. But so if you can sit there and say, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
How does he do the same thing? What I've found is in analyzing his words, you can sit there and stare at one of these Hebrew words, just one Hebrew word. And if you ponder that, something is locked up that can open in Hebrew words. And the way it opens is by contemplating each individual letter, by contemplating each pair of two letters, each verb root of three, by looking at the prefix, looking at the suffix, So now you're cognitively analyzing by doing that, and then you kind of step back from that analysis and you just kind of let the ideas kind of swim around. So last night, as Sally was calling out individual words that she thought of when she was looking at this, then it's like, okay, now let these words kind of swim together. And for it to affect our thinking, now you have to put them into a string of words, getting into English grammar: subject, predicate, noun, verb, adjective, adverb. What are you saying here? That's what you need to do. But all that is contemplating his words, and all that is listening to him from his heart level. Because what I found, my own personal experience, is that these words is where he hid his heart.
Because he wants to be pursued.
And he wants to be
He
pursued.
wants us to pursue.
There's a certain verse that talks about that. Now, when somebody brought this verse to my attention, it was really weird. It's like, what in the world is he talking about? Jeremiah 31. It says, Elohim will do something new in the land. The woman will, it's translated maybe pursue, the man, but it's also encompass or surround. Are you familiar with that verse?
Yeah, I'm trying to remember.
What does that mean? Does anybody want to venture guess? Yahweh will do something new in the land. The woman will encompass the man. What in the world does that mean?
Jeremiah 31:1.
No, 31 is, it's around the word, approximately the verse, maybe 35 or something.
So in the cultural marriage ceremony, the woman circles the man 7 times.
Why?
So doesn't that indicate or display the walking Moedim?
There happens to be 7 appointed time festivals referred to as Moedim. That's word study is another matter. But there is 7, and then there's the 7th day. So that opens up another question. Why is the number 7 considered the holy number?
Completion.
The number 7, completion of what? How many things are there in this room? A whole lot more than 7. If you're going to count them, 7 would not bring you to completion. Why do you think the number 7 means completion?
In his creation.
Well, he made it in 7 days. Why did he choose 7? Why didn't he choose 9?
Because he wanted to be consistent, obviously. We're trying to figure out with what.
Right. You see, what we're doing right now is we're looking at what it is, 7 days, and now I just kicked it into this other gear of saying, yeah, but why is it that? If I'm suggesting he designed everything on purpose to mean something, why in the world did he pick 7 one time in the creation of the day? Oh, 2 times the creation of the number of Moedim. And now she's saying, well, no, it's consistently all over the place. So I've heard people say 7 is the holy number, the heavenly number, the spiritual number, the completion number. What makes you think that it is? Just because you find packages of 7s all over the place? But the question is not, do you find packages of 7s? Why is there packages of 7s? Where do you look for the reason? Detective work. You see the crime, what's the motive? Who had the motive? So we're trying to identify the motive. Why in the world would Yahweh have a motive for using the number 7? Anybody?
Keep us focused on his Sabbath.
Pattern, laying a pattern,
Cycles.
setting it's a foundational pattern.
It's a foundational pattern, and there's cycles of 7, but why 7?
Why not 9?
Why not 9?
Yeah.
Okay, let me give you a clue. And this goes into the study of words. It's all about the word 7. Now in English, this is a 7. In Hebrew, the 7th letter is a Zion, which could be drawn like that, which is actually an axe, and if we have an axe, we might more shape it like that. It's the same thing. It's that which cuts off. It chops. Or it's an axe. But it's not just an axe. It could be a knife or a spear. It could,
Circumcision of the heart, like something to circumcise the heart.
yeah, but circumcision was on the 8th day, not the 7th.
You don't want to do that with an
No, what I'm saying is, huh? You don't want to do that with an axe.
Seconded.
I suck at cutting away. Spiritual. speaking.
7 is not just, this is the letter Zion, Z-A-Y-I-N is the way you do it with English phonetics. You remember there's a Greek, I don't know if she's a goddess, she's certainly a heroine. There was a TV show about her name was Xena. Xena the warrior princess, right?
Right.
Only I think they spelled her name with an X. Maybe X-E-N-A or something.
Yeah, it's TV they can mess with.
It's the same word, it's the same letter, and this doesn't mean only chops, axe, or weapon. It means to be adorned with or by weapons. So Xena didn't go down to Ross to get her clothing, or to, Victoria's Secret or something. She was dressed in weapons. That was her adornment. She was dressed in weapons, adorned with weapons. Xena, purely Hebrew. If you know that Zion is a Hebrew letter that means to be adorned by weapons. Okay, if Xena, the warrior princess, is adorned by weapons, and I could say Conan the Barbarian, adorned with weapons, right? He's got the sword on his back, and he's got this gear, and he's got... Okay, who else can you think of? What famous human figure was adorned with weapons? Who comes to mind?
Samson?
No, he just had long hair.
Well, I'm thinking the only weapon David had was his slingshot.
So but you don't think of David as adorned with weapons.
Right, exactly. Goliath.
Okay, now here, I'm going to give you a clue as to what I'm looking for here. Remember the Greek mind versus the Hebrew mind. The Greek mind is what does it look like, and the Hebrew mind is what does it do, right? Two different ways of thinking about the same object. If you can be adorned with weapons or by weapons, what does that mean?
That means you're powerful. You're forced to be reckoned with. You are a bad dude. Best or something like that.
That could mean that, okay. But now let's take it of another picture. What if weapons were put to you? Instead of you holding the weapons were used on you. Let's say some Romans took a weapon and struck you. Crown of thorns. That's Yeshua's. Now, why would a picture of Yeshua being crucified and ripped apart by Roman weapons, why would that be the number 7?
It's finished. That's consistent with what Brad said.
Right, but so here's the thing. If number 7 is a picture of Yeshua being crucified, that's just a random letter of the Hebrew alphabet. What letter came before that? What letter comes after that? And all of a sudden you realize there's a story going on. And it had nothing to do with Canaanite deities. It had nothing to do with cavemen and their accoutrements of their culture. Suddenly, this is about Yeshua. The interesting thing about the number 7 is that it's spelled Shin Bet Ayin. That literally means 7. But just like we read in here about Petov Het, it also means a few other things. It means to swear a vow. It also is the curse that you get for breaking the vow. It also means to be filled to the full as if the vow was paid. So what that means is that if you take out a loan to buy a car and you swear a vow to pay X number of dollars monthly, and once that car is paid for, it's now your car. You fulfilled your vow, your obligation. And if you fail to fulfill that obligation, they'll take the car and hammer you with more debt, penalizing you and ruining your credit and do all these other things, which are the curse for not fulfilling the vow. Why was Yeshua put to the Roman weapons? Why? We broke the vow. We broke the vow. Number 7, meaning vow. Every time you see the number 7, It's a reminder, not just a reminder, this is a sworn vow. Why does the woman walk around her husband in the bridal ceremony 7 times? She is swearing a vow of fidelity to her new husband. Why do we keep the 7th day as the day of the Sabbath of not working? Because it's swearing a vow of fidelity. Why do we keep 7 Moedim, of which this festival of Sukkot, in my reckoning, is number 6? Shemini Atzeret would be number 7. People disagree, that's another matter, we can get into it later. But the point is, there's 7 Moedim. The word Moedim, which is another word, sorry, we'll have to do another day. Moed, plural. Im, that's the plural. Mo, mem, that's the prefix, and it's a prefix suffix. This is the letter Vav, which is like a wild card, don't worry about it. So Ed is the 2-letter verb root. And Ed is spelled Ayin Dalet, which is the word witness and testimony. When you have a legal case, if you want to prove that you're right and the other guy's lying, you need witnesses. The word Moedim are witnesses, testimonies. Brad mentioned the phrase, he ornamented himself. This word also means ornament, jewelry, treasure. And when Yahweh in Leviticus 23 says, these 7 festivals and the day of Shabbat are my Moedi, he didn't use the word M in that first letter, he's saying, these are the things which I have appointed, which I have designed, which I have wrapped myself, my identity up in, which bear witness of who I am and where my heart is. And I've bejeweled myself with these festivals.
And what does Ed mean again?
Witness,
Witness.
testimony, jewelry, adornment, ornamentation, and a few other things. If you stick a vav between Ayin Dalet, Ode, it literally means again and again, repeatedly, forcefully. Make no mistake! Exclamation point. Again and again, witness testimony. It also means, you'll see that it means and ever. And how? Like forever and ever. It's like to infinity and beyond. You know, if it's forever, how can you have and ever? It's another witness of emphasis. Again and again. So when Yahweh gave 7 festivals, he says, I really mean this. I'm really serious about this. You know, 1 exclamation point, 2 3, 7 exclamation points. My point is, for Yahweh to say, I have wrapped myself up and I am presenting myself in these 7 Moedim. So, they're his vow to us. No, they're not. We're supposed to eat unleavened bread. We're supposed to live in tents. We're supposed to blow trumpets. And what are those other things? Oh yeah, starve yourself for a day. And that's all we know, because we have inherited lies from our ancestors who didn't want his stuff, didn't care about his stuff. We're a bunch of idiots, and we have the, you might say, the generational curse of now here we are. To look at his stuff in Hebrew is to break the curse and uncover the hidden paleo ancient truth that the words of Hebrew is a sworn vow interchanged between Yahuwah and Israel, his people, from the heart, and it's communicating a heart language, also processing the mind intellectually, but the only way for you to really get it intellectually is to communicate from the heart. And what I found is that by analyzing Hebrew letters, Hebrew word spelling from the mind, and contemplating, meditating just the spelling of the words from the heart, you will see Yahuwah. You will see Yeshua. Yeshua says, if you've seen me, you've seen my Father. He hid himself in these words. And there's nothing else like it on the planet. Unless you can study the plant and look into the plant and see its way it's constructed and say, wow, am I seeing Yahweh in here? It's not animism. It's not to say he's in the bush. But what he created testifies of his grandeur. Study the stars. Study the depths of the ocean. And they testify of his grandeur. The scriptures even say, that the heavens declare the glory of Elohim. But there's something about these words which are different than that glory, a different type of glory, getting into the realm of what we can only call emotion or belief, non-tangible essence.
Which really is like the Zion, like the seventh, because it's set apart from everything else. The language.
That which cuts and sets off. There's one other thing, and then we should probably quit. I think it feels like we're right around the time of stopping. But the thing is, you ever see a picture of a person, an old portrait, and they have a glow, like a halo around them? To put this glow around somebody like a halo is Zioning them. It's setting them apart. To have a king where you give him a crown, it's Zioning him. To have an officer where he has this big kind of a hat, if you put a little star on it, it's the same picture. It's setting him apart, designating, oh, this is special. For Pilate to take Yeshua, put a robe on him, give him this scepter, which is the stick they used to beat him with, to stick the crown of thorns, he was Zioning Yeshua. He was pointing at, look at this guy. And even when he did that and put him up there and he said in Latin, Ecce homo, behold the man. This man. And in Hebrew, the word spelled Zion, hey, literally is the word this. There's another word that means this. It's literally Zion, Aleph Tav. And they both mean this. So Zion is to specify, to point at. And if Yahweh had one thing to say to Israel, it was like, we had a deal, we had a covenant. Look at this covenant. I said I would be your Elohim. I would be your protector and defender and the provider of all your benefits. And you guys went looking for somebody else, committing adultery with every wood, stone, fantasy, fake deity which doesn't even exist, which all your idiot neighbors have invented and created, and you really think that's what you'd rather have a relationship with. Really. That's what number 7 says. And that's the story of the whole scripture. And the more you look at every single individual Hebrew word, this is reinforced and compounded over and over, again and again. The testimony that the Hebrew language is Yahweh revealing himself in relationship to his chosen people, Israel, sons of Abraham, Yitzhak, and Yaakov, and that the Hebrew language identifies Yeshua as being the Messiah, is blatant, clear, and obvious. But then why can't the Jews see it? Because they don't have the value of the letter referencing the whole picture. They know that the letter Zion is one, so do the Greeks, Zena. But they don't see that it's Yeshua. Why? That's more discussion. But anyway, we'll have to quit now. Unless anybody else has something to say or they want to contribute or question or anybody? Okay, take a break for a few hours.
Oh,
What?
you can finish that.